What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the Stay Strong, Stay You podcast. And listen, as always, whether it is your day one or you've been rocking and rolling with me for some time now, I truly want to appreciate each and every single one of you for taking time out of your day to hit play and spend time with me. So I hope you know that your presence is truly, truly, truly a gift to me. And now I'm honestly really excited about this episode because one, have an exciting announcement for you guys. Number two, we have some wins within the celebration station. And number three, we're going to be diving into, yes, a deep and heavy conversation, but honestly, an important conversation that I believe you and I need to have. So, with that being said, let's get into my exciting announcement that the Stay Strong, Stay You podcast has our first sponsor with Lotus. Lotus is the number one selling plant based energy concentrates in the USA. Create a rainbow of handcrafted, flavor infused plant powered drinks with Lotus concentrates, or grab their ready to go cans. Lotus was so amazing and sent me a free pack of their 12 pack ready to go cans. And it was my first time having them, but I've absolutely been loving them. I think I only have three left because they're just that good. This one is the Gold Lotus, bold and bubbly. I've been loving them, but I've also really, for the past several months, have been loving their concentrates. I have been a big energy drink person for quite some time now. And, going to stores, going to coffee drinks to grab an energy drink, it can get expensive. So that is why I love Lotus, because I am now able to make my own energy drinks in the morning. I honestly love getting creative with all the different flavors that they have and the ways that you can just handcraft your own flavor infused plant power energy drink. So if you're interested in checking out Lotus, you can go to www.lotusplantpower.com and use discount code BeccaB10 for 10% off your order. Again, that is www.lotusplantpower.com and use discount code BeccaB10 at checkout for 10% off. Cheers to Lotus for being our first sponsor. All right. So now getting into the celebration station. Some of you guys may be wondering, what is the celebration station? So the celebration station is where I take a moment to celebrate you guys, because listen, this podcast is not all about me. This is a we thing, right? So I wanted to create a space with inside the Stay Strong, Stay You podcast where you guys know that you can be seen and celebrated for life wins. No matter how big or small, we celebrate them all over here because those small wins lead to the greater results in the future. So we have two wins today. The first win is from Angelina, who says, I helped a friend by motivating them to go for their dreams. Let's go, Angelina. That is a huge win because each and every single one of us need that person to be motivating and encouraging us to go for it and to support them in their journey. So shout out to you for being a shining star in somebody else's life, and keep shining your light because you can and because you are absolutely amazing. So thank you, my friend, for sharing your win. The second person wanted to remain anonymous, but this person said, I started talking to my therapist about getting off medications for my mental health. This is something that I think I want for me. This is a huge win in my book because I think it is absolutely amazing that you are taking the step of first talking to your therapist about this step that you want. And I think it is really important that we have those conversations before fully going forward with it. At least that was the case in my life as well. So I again just want to say that I am on both sides. If you take mental health medication, I am here for it. Keep taking your medication. And if you are somebody who has gotten off or wants to get off your mental health medication, I'm also for it. I have gone through my seasons of being on medication for my mental health, and I also then experienced adverse side effects. So I did get off of my mental health medications, and I know what it's like to have that first conversation and start talking with your therapist and your medical team about wanting to get off of medication. So huge shout out to you. That is such a big win. Keep us updated. Let us know how it's going, and we want to again continue to celebrate you. And if you want your win shouted out on the Stay Strong, Stay You podcast, you can submit your win with the form that is in the description of this podcast. It is also linked in all of my profiles on social media. So on Instagram at Becca Boston 26, on TikTok at Becca Boston 6. So please do me a favor, go submit your wins. Again, no matter how big or small, we celebrate them all. So shout out to you guys. All right, now's the time where I feel like I'm gonna bring down my energy a little bit. I am a very high energy person. Even without caffeine, I am a pretty high energy person. But I want to get serious. I want to bring forward this deep and sometimes hard conversation to have. But again, I truly believe it is one that we need to be continuing to talk about because it is something that so many people are facing and engaging in. And I do just want to say, number one, if you are not in a place where you can handle a conversation about self-harm, please do what you need to do for you in this moment. And if that means you need to pause and close out this episode, please do. You can always come back to it later. If you know somebody who is facing these challenges, please do me a favor, send it to them. Let them know that recovery is possible. And most importantly, I just want to say that I am not a mental health professional. I am somebody with lived experience. I did face an addiction to self-harm for far too long that I hid behind my bright smile and outgoing personality. But today and this year, I am celebrating 10 years self-harm free. So this is something that is personal, but not only that, I think it is just something that we need to continuously talk about and bring awareness about. So, with that being said, again, why are we talking about it? Not only because of my lived experience, but because 17% of all people will self-harm in their lifetime. 17% of people will self-harm in their lifetime. And the average of the first incident of self-harm is 13 years old. The average age of the first incident of self-harm is 13 years old. And about 50% of people seek help, but only with friends or a trusted adult, not a professional. About 50% of people seek help for self-harm, but only with friends, not a professional. And don't get me twisted on this. When I first read this, I was amazed that 50% of people seek help. I think that's really great. We're making improvement within that. However, the thing that sparked question for me or a little bit of concern within this is, again, I believe that it is really valuable that people are seeking their trusted person in life to ask for help, right? However, the thing with self-harm is that there is often more happening behind the scenes or behind the mask with an individual's life. And that is why I truly believe that it is critical for you to receive that professional help, right? So for me personally, when I first was kind of called out about my self-harm, which I'm grateful for because I was able to then go get help. I remember talking with my therapist and her educating me that self-harm is a negative coping skill and that there is more things that need to be addressed behind the mask. However, we can't begin to address what's behind the mask before we put into place positive coping skills. We have to get rid of the negative coping skills and in return put in positive coping skills so that way we can address what's behind the mask. Because if we just go straight to addressing what's behind the mask, I will continue on with the negative coping skill of self-harm. So for me, it was a journey of learning how to be able to implement positive coping skills. And we'll get there closer to the end. I will actually give you guys the toolkit that helped me. I have a digital workbook that you guys can have if you would like it to be able to go through a self-care toolkit that I created based off of my lived experience as well as discuss some of the positive coping skills that I implemented into my life. But I just think that it is very, very, very important for people to seek that professional help. So again, I am not a mental health professional, but I am somebody with lived experience. So, what is self-harm? Self-harm describes any behavior where someone causes harm to themselves, usually as a way to cope with difficult or distressing thoughts and feelings. So, how I kind of want to approach this conversation is honestly, I want to give you guys some myths about self-harm and debunk them with you. So, the first myth about self-harm that I want to debunk is that cutting is the only form of self-injury. That is not true. There are many, many different aspects of self-harm. People often ask me the ways in which I engaged in self-harm, and to be honest, it is not something that I want to put out there. Um, Mainly because I don't want to rewatch certain parts of my content and be reminded of that or have anybody use it against me in any way. It's just something that is very personal to me, and only those who were on the journey with me or are very close to me really know. But I do think it is, again, important to know some of the other aspects. So take this as education. And I just pray that you're able to hear these without engaging. So, again, if you're not in a mental place to kind of continue on with this conversation, please pause this and come back to it later, or don't come back to it at all if you're not in the place where you can really hear some of this information. But I do just want to go over some of the um, things that people can be engaging in that are considered self-harm. So, number one, cutting. That is usually what people most think of self-harm being. And it is an aspect of self-harm, but there is so much more. There's also piercing skin with a sharp object that doesn't always have to be leading to, seeing blood. There's also opening old wounds or scratching at bug bites till they bleed and get infected. There's also hitting or punching things. There's burning oneself. There's head banging, substance abuse, and restricting your eating, and so, so, so much more. So please go do your research on what other aspects of self-harm there are, because there's a wide variety of different things that people can be engaging in. So it is, again, something very serious to be taken seriously. So do your education. A great resource to do education would be NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So again, first myth that we are debunking is that cutting is the only form of self-injury. That is not true. The second myth that I want to debunk is that people who self-injure are always suicidal. This is a myth. This is not true. People who are usually engaging in self-harm are turning to it as a negative coping skill. They are dealing with those distressing and difficult thoughts and feelings. So for myself personally, I was facing a domestic violence relationship that, again, I was hiding behind my smile and outgoing personality, and I was feeling, alone. I was feeling unworthy. I was questioning if the abuse would ever stop. I was questioning so much within inside of myself that it became overwhelming and led to so much panic that I didn't know where to take this internal pain other than to harm myself. And that is the case for very many other people. Very many other people. That didn't really make sense, but it came out of my mouth. Words will word. Let's get back to it though. um, but it is something that a lot of other people face where there's something happening behind the scenes. They're triggered by something. And those triggers can be a wide variety of different things or different reasons. There could be difficulties at home. There could be arguments or problems with friends or family. There could be school pressure. There could be bullying. There could be depression. There could be anxiety, low self-esteem, transitions and change, or alcohol and drug use. There can be so many different things that cause people to be triggered and to then engage in self-harm. So it is not always the case that somebody who is engaging in self-harm wants to end their life or throw in the towel of their life. So again, people who self-injure are always suicidal. That is not true. Moving on to number 3, people who self-injure do it for attention. This is also not true, not the case. People who are engaging in self-harm are often not even thinking about how other people are going to react. They're just in the moment wanting that temporary release. I know for me, I wasn't often thinking about getting caught in that moment. For me, I just wanted to get rid of the temporary pain that was happening in my mind or happening with inside of my own body. So to say that we want it for attention, no, that's such a myth. It's so not true. There's often this like cycle of self-harm that causes us to kind of go back to the addiction because it is an addiction. And this is kind of the cycle of you have that trigger, that reason. Again, that could be a wide variety of different things from, you know, arguments happening in the home, transitional changes, depression, anxiety, all of these different triggers that could happen for one person, right? And that causes them to engage in self-harm. But after the act of harming yourself often comes this shame and this guilt that you feel. I know for me, I often worried and wondered if I'd get caught. I didn't feel good about what I did to my body. And I often questioned if I would be caught, or anything along those lines, which then led to this emotional suffering and shame of why I did it, right? So there's this emotional suffering and then like an emotional overload that happens too. And then you begin to panic again. Or maybe this trigger comes on again, right? And that panic or that trigger comes on and you go right back to it. And it's kind of this cycle that you just keep going through until hopefully one day you reach out for that help. You start going to see that professional or that therapist, and you start to receive the support that you need to take it one day at a time to put down that addiction to self-harm because it is a process. And like I talked about in the beginning, I do think it is important to be able to first start implementing positive coping skills before we start addressing the bigger issue behind the mask of what's going on. And sometimes, obviously, again, I'm not a mental health professional, but I think it can be named. I think me naming to my therapist at that time that I was had been involved in a domestic violence relationship and that I had a lot of trauma within that. And to cope with that, I turned to self-harm. And we began making kind of like a game plan on how to move ahead of, yes, we are going to start processing the trauma. However, we can't do that until, well, number one, I had to get on the right medications at that time. But number two, I needed to, again, start implementing these positive coping skills and prove to myself that I could get one day clean. I could then get 2 days clean. I could then get 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and so on and so forth because taking it one day at a time is critically important. And sometimes you need to take it moment by moment, right? Like we don't even have to focus on the full 24 hours. If all you can do is focus on the first 5 minutes, focus on the 5 minutes. If you got to focus on a minute at a time, focus on a minute at a time, right? But proving to yourself that maybe you can get a half a day and then a full day and then 2 days, whatever increment works for you, focus on the small amount of time and prove to yourself that you can do it. And throughout time, you'll begin to build up that resilience and you'll begin to implement those positive coping skills that work for you. Because that's the other thing is it's a lot of trial and error within recovery. There is no one road to recovery. It's not point A to point B. There's, a lot of setbacks, trials, tribulations, but I feel like so often people give up because they think that there has to be one straight path, and that's just not the case. So trial and error, different positive coping skills that will work for you. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But the last and final myth that I want to debunk is that self-harm is a goth thing or only for girls. And that is, again, such a lie, such a freaking myth that is just not true. Not true, not true, not true, not true. It is not defined by one demographic or one group of individuals. I often hear too that people think that self-harm is just for people who listen to emo music, and that is not the case, right? I do just want to say, like, within music and all of that, there are songs that can be really healing to listen to. I'm sure you can probably think of those songs that, you know, make you feel seen and heard and that you can relate to. And there's also those songs that can trigger us back to a negative situation. So that's why I always say be aware of the music that you're listening to. But to say that it is because of one genre of music, that's some that's some BS in my book. Like, no, it can impact anyone. It can impact boys, girls, women, men, and a wide variety of different age groups. It does typically start young, but somebody can pick it up in adulthood as well. So, um, just be aware of it and know that it can happen within anybody's life. You know, I often go into schools and speak to the youth about mental health when I share my journey on self-harm. I get so many youth coming to me still to this day, letting me know that they're engaging in self-harm. I had one individual that came up to me after I spoke, and she said, for the first time, I'm meeting somebody in person who's showing me that recovery is possible. And that meant the world. As my heart broke for her, but also to know that she met somebody and she now knows recovery is possible. And I got her to a teacher to be able to receive the support that she needs. But it is something that I so often hear. I often also share, this is more of another impact moment of sharing my journey of self-harm. And I shared that, you know, I was celebrating 10 years self-harm free this year. And I passed out note cards for individuals to be able to write down questions that we'd answer at the end. And I received one and it said, not a question, just want you to know I'm so proud of you. Keep going. Just from a girl who's been through a lot of shit. And when I tell you guys that brought me to tears, that brought me to tears. And that note still sits with me in my car. So those are just some moments that come to me as I step out into schools to talk about it. I've also had people on social media or in real life come up to me to let me know that it's something that they are either currently facing or that they used to face with, and the importance of continuing the conversation, which is why I wanted to do a podcast episode about it. So never judge a book by its cover. You never know what's happening behind the scenes for somebody. And also, if that is you, if you are struggling with this, I want you to know that help is available and that recovery is possible. So I do want to dive into like help, what help can look like, and some positive coping skills with you guys. So that way we're not ending on a deep, deep level. Hopefully I can provide you with some more positive coping skills that you can trial and error and see what works for you. Obviously, the first one that I'm going to recommend is professional help. Seeking professional help is super, super, super important. And it is honestly one of your biggest strengths. I know it is not easy to speak up and give your pain a voice, but it is truly a sign of your strength of being able to acknowledge that you need the help. And I think too, being able to receive that help is such a true gift and strength, because sometimes we block our blessing, or we block the good things in life because we can get so used to the negativity. So to be able to speak up and give your pain a voice and receive the help that is truly needed is such a strength and is kind of the mission behind Stay Strong, Stay You. So speak up and get professional help. Some of the positive coping skills that have worked for me. There are honestly so many that I could dive into. One of the most powerful ones is called the Butterfly Project. This is one that is kind of known, if you have been kind of aware of self-harm for a while, but the Butterfly Project is pretty cool. You draw a butterfly on your body of where you feel like you're going to self-harm or where may be a reminder to not engage in self-harm. And you can take it as far as naming the butterfly, right? So you draw a butterfly on yourself, you name the butterfly, and then as long as you do not engage in a relapse, you keep that butterfly alive. That butterfly gets to continue to fly free. But if you relapse, you have to erase the butterfly, symbolizing that you did relapse. You can take it another step further and you can get anybody that is in your support system a you can just ask people in your support system to join in with you. That's something that I did with my recovery friend as well. And the other thing that helped me, which is part of my self-care toolkit, is coming up with your emergency on-call list. Having an emergency on-call list is super, super important because when you are in the midst of thinking about relapsing or going through a distressing or challenging time, it doesn't necessarily always have to be relapse if that's something you're not facing, because you can implement this emergency on-call list and this toolkit that I'm about to share with you into any aspect of your life, even if it's high anxiety or depression, whatever it may be. These are all things that you can implement. And some people tell me that it is like common sense stuff. But honestly, when you're going through it, when you're in the thick of like thinking about relapsing or going through a huge panic attack, sometimes you're not thinking about the common things. Like sometimes you need to have these things written down. So this workbook that I have for you guys really breaks down those things and it gives you pages to write in what will work for you. And again, it's all trial and error, but it's to be able to have it so you can look at it when you may be going through that challenging time. So going back to the emergency on call list. The emergency on call list is writing down 1 to 5 people that you can call in a time of need. And I always say that it's important to have at least 3, I think, to be able to turn to, because the thing that I've had to learn throughout my recovery in my life is that we cannot always expect people to drop everything because we're having an emergency or we're in a crisis. Yes, it is a blessing when we have those people and they're able to do that, but that we can't always expect people to drop everything for us. So the intent of having 3 people, at least 3 people, is that if the first person doesn't answer, you call, you leave a voicemail, you shoot them a text maybe, and just say, hey, when you get a moment, can we please check in? I'm not doing too great right now. You could also have like an emoji that kind of symbolizes that. My emoji was like the alarm emoji to let somebody know, like, hey, when you get a chance, I need to check in because I'm not doing okay right now. But if that first person doesn't answer, you call, you text them, whatever it may be, you move on to the second person. You keep calling down that list to see if anybody will answer. Hopefully somebody does for you. But if not, then you also have the 988 crisis and suicide hotline. This is knowing that even if somebody else doesn't answer, you always have somebody that you can call, text, or chat with. 988, again, is the crisis and suicide hotline where you can be connected with a mental health professional 24/7. So it is a great resource to have. So highly encourage you to think about who you would put on your emergency on call list. The next aspects of the self-care tool kit that I have are all things within the 5 senses. So something to see. These are often like pictures that bring you happiness or maybe a magazine to look at, images that bring you peace, a vacation that you really enjoyed, that you had fun on, people that are important within your life. I have things around my room and my mini apartment that just bring me that peace or reminds me of people that are important within my life. I have a specific album within my phone so that way I can have that on the go as well. So being able to have something positive that you're able to see. The next would be something to touch. This could be a sofa blanket. This could be a stuffy. Honestly, I'm 32 years old and I still love me a good stuffed animal. I'm not gonna lie, judge me if you want, but I love it about me. Um, this could be a wide variety of different things. I also was given by one of my incredible recovery friends, shout out to Nicole, who made me, it's like a rosary and it's just knotted knots on a bracelet, a really long bracelet. And that has been honestly a really big thing for me throughout my recovery, in moments in which I was experiencing high anxiety or thinking about relapsing or anything along those lines. I would just kind of go through the knots and allow myself to breathe. Something to smell. This could be, a candle. This could be essential oils, whatever smell is good for you that brings you peace, that helps soothe your anxiety, is another thing that you could turn to. Let's see, something to see, something to hear is what we can go to next. I'm like, why can't I think through all of the five senses right off the top of my head? I should have written this down, but that's okay. Um, Something to hear, something to listen to. This could be a podcast. This could be a song that again lifts your spirits and gets you moving and grooving. We all have that one thing. I also too just want to say this is something that took me a really long time to learn in my recovery, but silence. I know it can be so hard, especially when you're going through it, to sometimes sit with your own thoughts. But I've learned that sometimes silence holds the answers, right? Sometimes silence will allow you to gain clarity through just allowing yourself to just be. And maybe that's through journaling, maybe that's you learning how to kind of coach yourself in sitting in that silence. And I understand, like, when you're early on in recovery, sometimes that is so critically hard to do, like, or seem like it's impossible to do. But maybe just take it for a minute at a time, 30 seconds at a time. And if you're never comfortable with it, that's okay. I understand. Trust me, I understand. There's still days in my life currently that I'm like, I do not want to sit in silence, but I've also recognized how healing it can be. So, something to hear, something to listen to is also really important. Something to taste. So this could be your favorite snack, because I truly believe, honestly, life is too short not to enjoy the foods that you love. Not a nutritionist in any way, shape, or form. I will say, you know, in small increments or, whatever. But also when you're going through it, like, give yourself some grace. Give yourself permission to, indulge in your favorite snack and take care of your mental health through that, if that is something that works for you. For me, I know I love a good bucket of ice cream, and if you take ice cream away from me, my mental health will be plummeting. But find those things that can be able that you can turn to eat. Also, I will say that citrus things are a really great thing to be able to turn to. There is some scientific research, I think, that you could look into about how citrus, so sucking on a lemon or lime, can disrupt something in our minds to be able to help us calm down. That has honestly been something that has been really, really helpful for me in my journey. I will just say that my dad would say that if you're going to suck on a lemon, make sure you brush your teeth after, otherwise it can destroy your enamel on your teeth. But at the same time, do what you got to do for your mental health in that moment, and friendly reminder, just to brush your teeth. So shout out to him for that. We love him. Um, but um, all of these things are just things that you can take and hopefully implement into your life. Again, I do have a digital workbook that you guys are more than welcome to download. The book is called Safe Harbor: Creating a Self-Care Toolkit for Peace and Protection. Again, it is based off of my lived experience of going through an addiction to self-harm. But again, you can implement this in a wide variety of different other ways. People have used it for anxiety. Some people have used it, when they're having those panic attacks. A wide variety of different situations that people have used it, not just because they were facing an addiction to self-harm. So go give it a look and see if it's something you'd be interested in. You can download it with the link in this the link in the description of this podcast. You can also go to any of my social media, and it is also linked in the link in my bio. Again, on Instagram, Becca Boston 26, and on TikTok at Becca Boston 6. Or feel free to reach out to me as well. I was also just gonna say some other positive coping skills that have helped me are ice cubes. Holding ice cubes in my hand was another positive coping skill that I was able to go to. And then honestly, if you can find just even one person that can go through the midst of recovery with you, I think it's truly, truly something that is really valuable. I had my really good friends who I was going through recovery with, and we would support each other in the most amazing and incredible ways. And I will never forget the one day that she brilliantly came up with an amazing way for us to distract each other in the moments in which we felt like we were going to self-harm, because sometimes that's all it is. You just need a distraction to get through that thought of a relapse. So in our recovery, we always had an agreement that, we'd always be willing to distract each other, but we'd also be able to provide each other with a listening ear in the moment if we did need to give our pain a voice, or if we didn't want to talk to each other about that pain. We just made an agreement that we'd talk about it in our next therapy session and like name to each other when our next therapy session was. But she came up with a brilliant idea, and mind you, this is back in the day when we didn't have all the fancy, fancy apps that we have today to play games with each other. But she started a text thread with me that was playing Connect 4 with emojis. And still to this day, it is something that I look back that I'm truly grateful for, to be able to have that recovery buddy and somebody who is so creative in ways that we could distract and just come together to support each other. In our recovery, we'd also go out and like smash plates, because at that time we were also trying to find my anger, which was a whole other journey and topic for another day. But I would just encourage you all to be able to find that one person that you can go through recovery with, or even that one person that maybe you keep a track with how many days self-harm free you have. I still to this day in my TikTok DMs have people sending me messages daily with how many days that they have self-harm free, because to them that is their form of accountability of getting another day. So if that is something that you need to do, my DMs are open. I will always, always, always say I love connecting with you guys. It is one of my absolute favorite things to do, to be honest. Like, I genuinely love connecting with you guys. I always just say and put the disclaimer that my DMs are not a replacement for 988. If you need immediate help, if you need immediate attention, call or text 988. It is 24/7. You will be connected to a mental health professional, which is critically important because I am also not a mental health professional and I have my own life going on as well. So, my DMs are open to connect with you guys. And again, I love connecting with you guys. I do just say that my DMs are not a replacement for 988 or other mental health emergencies. So, all that being said, I appreciate you guys having this conversation with me. I hope that you were able to learn or take something away. And again, if you know somebody who is facing an addiction to self-harm, I hope you are able to share this with them and let them know that recovery is possible. And do me a favor as well, let me know your biggest takeaway or that you tapped in by sharing a screenshot or your biggest takeaway on Instagram. tag me in them. I love always connecting with you guys and seeing those. So, again, my Instagram is Becca Boston 26. But I really appreciate each and every single one of you guys for tuning in, for taking time out of your day to spend with me, to have this heavy but important conversation. And again, please know that your strength is giving your pain a voice and receiving the help that you need while staying true to who you are. You are one heck of a resilient warrior within this game of life. And I love you and I appreciate you being here. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. But no matter what, stay strong, stay you, because you got this.